Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, starring Sophia Boutella, Jimon Hounsou, Ed Skrein, Charlie Hunnam, Ray Fisher, Jenna Malone, Corey Stoll, and Anthony Hopkins, directed by Zack Snyder. Now, I have watched this movie twice for this review, and do I regret it? Well, let's get into the review and find out. We open with a narration in space from the robot Jimmy, voiced by Anthony Hopkins, and I thought, yep, this is going to be a long movie with dreadful at the same time about a war breaking out through the realms, and people call themselves rebels as we enter a planet, I'm guessing on a red moon, as I don't quite get where we're at, as Cora, played by Sophia Boutella, goes to a party with her townsfolk as someone has a crush on her, and I can't tell who it is. It might be Gunner, but I'll get to him later. As she's a farmer and literally a strong one at best. And don't get me wrong, director Zack Snyder does have a vision of telling the story with the visuals, but the way it's executed is absolutely poor in my opinion. As I don't get this beginning thus far 6 minutes into the movie. The next day comes and Cora works on the farm, and with Sam, and some military men from space come in thanks to Gunner, played by Michael Huisman, who's the one that had the crush on Cora, calling them down as he's a traitor. And this guy at first was giving me a character Dominic West played in another Zack Snyder film, 300 vibe. And at first, I thought he was the bad guy, but he's one of the heroes by the end of this movie. As Atticus Noble, played by Ed Skrein, comes to their planet to find out who sent them a message to come down, and as it was Gunner, and Noble gets Sindri, briefly by Corey Stoll, killed, while they need some soldiers in their army and negotiates with Gunner. While we get introduced to Jimmy and another soldier, Eris, as he doesn't want the other soldiers named Marcus to beat up on the townsfolk, like Sam, for example, as well as one of the soldiers antagonizes her, as well as Eris and Jimmy, as I brought up earlier. And Sam talks with Jimmy while he gets cleaned up by the mud Marcus threw at him while he was carrying some boxes. And Sam makes Jimmy a flower hat, and I'm not liking these characters thus far, as the acting in this is terrible. And I didn't have a good time with this movie at this point, I'm going to just say early on. Everybody blames Gunner for the death of Sindri, as Cora is trying to be around for the soldiers, is tired of being around the soldiers, I'll say, and decides to run away. And once again, as she had a past, and she was with them, and we'll get there when the movie tells the audience about it. And she almost runs until she sees Sam getting assaulted by Marcus and the other soldiers, except for Eris. And she fights them and beats the living crap out of them. With Eris, Jimmy killing one off each, I'll say, while Cora kills most of them off, and the stylized violence felt very rough for a PG 13 rated movie, as this should have been rated R, while Zack Snyder once again does his signature slow motion crap, as that was really getting on my nerves throughout the movie, and I personally think Zack Snyder really needs to knock that off at this point, as he stretched his movies to be too long, as this is a long movie at 2 hours and 13 minutes, and the slow motion crap should really stop, as Snyder does it too often in his movies. Cora decides they need to fight the military, taking Gunner with her to go recruit some people, while Cora explains to Gunner the story of how she became a soldier as a little girl and grew up to be one of them, and I couldn't help but notice how dramatic the score was. And that was another thing that bothered me to death. And Snyder did that in his cut of Justice League, as some of it could have been recycled from his cut of Justice League, as that was painful to listen to. While we continue with Cora's story, she had a lover who was killed in action, and she tells the story of Gunner to know her and to let him know what she can do. And the acting from Sophia Boutella during that scene is painful. Just painful. Cora and Gunner get to a town where they see his contact getting killed buy a machine and they go into a bar as a monstrous man pays to have sexual intercourse with Gunner. I'm going to take a wild guess on that. As he says everything is for sale in the bar, and Cora tells the monstrous bastard, let's call him, to leave them alone as he runs out to get more men to beat up Cora. And Cora asks where General Titus, played later on by G.B.M.H, is at, and learns his story as well and gets a leave him alone speech as the monstrous bastard comes in with two others. And we get another slow motion action scene that's horrible, and it ends with Kai, played by Charlie Hunnam, saving their asses and taking them to his ship to find General Titus. And why with the stupid slow motion? Why? Why? Because it's his signature, and I don't care if it's his style, as he really needs to knock it off, as he overstretched the length of this stupid ass movie, while we get Noble as a robot by getting some wires off of him as he chats with the Colonel, and Kai, Cora, and Gunner talk with Tarak, and they start gambling by flying some kind of flying thing. And I just don't care at this point, as it's very headache worthy. So Tarak flies the bird-looking creature, but not his master. They hire him, while Kai has a couple of others for hire. As we move on to a different planet to find Nemesis, who's played by Bae Duna, who I recognized from the Wachowskis' Cloud Atlas, as she defeats Harmada, played briefly by Jenna Malone, as she was a spider-looking creature, and she's wasted in this movie, who kind of gets killed, but she's in the next movie, and they get her on the and they get what's her name again? Not Harmada, but Nemesis on their ship, and Cora explains how she was a bodyguard of Princess Issa. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Please forgive me for that. As she was a little girl, and she was impressed by how special she was, as she was told she will become queen by her mother and father, played by Rhiannon Reeves from the 2018 Halloween film, and Carrie Elways, which felt a little wasted, as he's a better actor than this. They go to another planet where they find the man, the myth, the legend, General Titus, as he really wants to be left alone, as he wants to die in peace because of what he did, which was he got his soldiers killed many years ago. And Cora tells him he's not meant to die here, and reluctantly agrees to help Cora to get her farm back with Gunner and help out Kai and the others, while Noble sets a man free by killing him after telling them who is there looking for some information about it. And I swear to God, I can't memorize who the hell these characters are, as I don't give a damn about them whatsoever, as they hire an army led by Bloodaxe, played by Ray Fisher, and Milius, played by E. Duffy, and I still don't care, as I can't keep these characters straight, as the actors are very unconvincing in their roles, and this is such a terrible movie with the cast this stacked. With their army stacked up, and Kai talks with Cora as he's unsure whether or not the army will help them or not, while Noble and his army are torturing others left to right and killing off their rulers. And all of this is kind of boring me, as I don't get what's happening, as I'm not getting into this crap whatsoever. They arrive at a rock planet as we learn Kai betrayed the farmers and shot down the army and captured the farmers and the people helping the farmers. And even though Charlie Hunnam has played villains before, this came off kind of surprising, as I'll give the movie a point for that, as he knows she was a soldier. And Noble arrives as Kai was working for him, and he introduced his soldiers to the helpers of the farmer army, and he takes Cora's gun away from her, and Noble calls her a Scargiver, which is the title of the second half of this movie. And then by the second half, I'm talking about the next movie. And Kai takes Gunner to the machine, and Cora is on and almost kills her off. And while we learn Gunner is alive, in love with Cora, until he kills Kai, And we get the final action sequence beginning with the releasing of the other people in the farmer army. And at this point, I was having a headache as I don't care anymore. Blood Axe dies during the final battle by killing off an enemy ship, and Korra has a fight with Noble, and again, they punch very hard for a PG 13 rated movie until she stabs him in the leg and continues to punch him until she knocks his teeth out and throws him off the edge. And Milius wants to die with Blood Axe and her army, and Turok gets Korra to the other side while General Titus makes a speech about how this is the beginning of a war. And they get to the farm where Korra and Gunner came from, and they spot Jimmy with a spear. As we lead to a part 2 by finding Noble's body, and the bad guys resurrect him as he and remember he's a robot, and he'll be back with a vengeance. As that's the end of part 1, and this climax meant nothing to me as it was stupid as hell. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this movie a 1.7 out of 10. Don't get me wrong, Zack Snyder does have a vision of telling this story with the visuals, but the way it's executed is unfortunately poor in my opinion, as I don't like the characters, as the acting in this was terrible, and I didn't have a good time with the movie. The slow motion made this movie too long at 2 hours and 13 minutes, and there were times I noticed it to the point it was getting on my nerves, and Zack Snyder, seriously, knock it off with that, as that got annoying after a while, and while the score was noticeably dramatic and distracting, as some of it could have been recycled from Snyder's cut of Justice League, as that was another thing that bothered me for half of the movie. It's a very headache-worthy movie with Zack Snyder's style all over the place, and at the end of the day, I just don't care, as this is a strong, I'll say, non-recommendation, as this is a painful, stupid movie with crap being all over the place, and I can't believe 2 things. 1, they're getting the most views on Netflix. And 2, there's going to be a second part of this damn thing. And after that, I don't want any more of what this has to offer, nor do I want any more of what Zack Snyder's style, as it is overstretched, like I said. As it overstretched the movie at 2 hours and 13 minutes, and this is currently his worst film yet to date, next to Army of the Dead, as his second worst, until we get part 2. Maybe part 2 will be worse. I don't know. I'll find out by April. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and I'll be back in April with the Rebel Moon 2, The Scargiver. That won't be till like sometime in April, middle of April at best. And until then,